Hey, what's up guys, Benny here and welcome to the best MP5 for Call of Duty Warzone. As you'll probably know, the MP5 has been one of the best guns in Modern Warfare and has sat at the top of the most used weapons in the game since it came out. It's powerful, versatile and also really easy to use. The pros use it in the CWL, and every player going for high kill gameplays and who play in tournaments also make sure that they use it in Warzone. Though you probably heard it last week, it was hit by a secret nerf, which makes the MP5 whilst using the collapsible stock not as good whilst aiming down sights. That nerf made the MP5 a little wider on your screen, which, don't get me wrong, doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it's actually harder to see what's going on around where you're aiming whilst you're in ADS. That then means it can make it difficult to make those slight adjustments to counter an enemy's movement, which will help you win gunfights and pick up the kill. And on top of that, everyone uses the collapsible stock. It was like the single attachment that everyone agreed on within Warzone because it gave you that maximum mobility, which was one of the reasons it was the best gun in the game. Now, because of that nerf, I've completely changed the MP5 that I use to be more hipfire focused, and I've already noticed a significant improvement in my gameplay for a few reasons that I'll go into during this video, and I'll of course give you my new MP5 setup for you to go ahead and use yourself, along with some tips and tricks to get the most out of it, because it will take you some getting used to in order to get as many kills as possible. Also, 71% of you watching are not subscribed to the channel, and we're so close to hitting 400,000 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe, and I promise you, you'll get better at Warzone. Now, within any of my best setup videos, I think it's important to make sure you know everything about the gun because it'll pay off later on in the game. First of all, one of the reasons the MP5 is so good is because of its damage profile. It deals 49 damage to the head, 34 to the body, and then 30 to the limbs, combined with a really solid fire rate of 833 rounds per minute. This leads to you being able to do around 472 damage a second if you're hitting the body, and then 680 if you're landing those headshots, giving the MP5 a time to kill anywhere between 365 milliseconds to 504 milliseconds, depending on where you're landing your shots on a fully plated opponent. The only SMG that can actually come close to the MP5 is the Fennec, which has that 486 milliseconds time to kill with shots to the body, but you just burn through ammo too quickly for Warzone, which makes the MP5 the undisputed king. It'll take you between 6 to 8 bullets to take down a fully plated opponent with the MP5. So the class setup that I'm about to show you will allow you to do that with ease whilst maintaining maximum mobility, making you as hard to take down as possible, which my old build didn't do as much. Something else to remember with the MP5 is its recoil tends to pull up and towards the right, so make sure you counter that with a slight slow diagonal left movement with your thumbstick or mouse to counter that recoil. Okay, it's now time for my MP5 class setup, and what you'll instantly notice about this MP5 build is that it's designed for hipfire rather than aiming down sights, and as I mentioned, there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, the collapsible stock is no longer as powerful since the nerf, as you lose that peripheral vision that you had to make those slight adjustments in tight spaces to win gunfights. Also, your mobility when aiming down sights is not as high, which firstly means you're an easier target to hit as you're not moving as quickly and you're more predictable for another player. So when using this hipfire build, it'll take you a couple of games to get used to, as you won't be aiming down sights as often in those close range fights. So you'll have to learn to track targets without that aim down sight slowdown that you normally get, but it is totally worth it. The build starts with the monolithic integral suppressor for that barrel attachment, which gives you sound suppression and then increased bullet velocity while slowing your aim down sight speed, which is no longer that big of an issue. Next, you want the 5 megawatt laser. This will greatly improve your hipfire accuracy and also increases your sprint to fire speed, which is only going to help increase your time to kill speed when rushing enemies inside of buildings. The downside is that the laser is going to be visible to enemy players, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. Though when using the laser, if you're pre-aiming a corner, make sure to pre-aim the corner of the wall so the laser doesn't go past, which could be seen by an enemy player. Next, you want to use the Merc foregrip, which gives you increased recoil control and hipfire accuracy, before having the 45 round mag, and then I've also started using sleight of hand. Now, the reason that I've started using sleight of hand is because I'm playing a lot more quads where you face multiple enemies quite quickly, and that fast reload time can make all the difference. And because this is a hipfire build, none of the other attachments really make that big of a difference to the gun's performance. Now, I'll usually pair the MP5 with an assault rifle in Warzone, something like the Kilo or the M4, but I'll cover that in my next best loadouts video. So you've now got the best class setup for the MP5 in Call of Duty Warzone, but you now importantly need to know how to get the most out of it, because when I made the switch, I found it quite difficult at first. The hardest thing to learn is when to hip fire and when to aim down sights. For me personally, anything close range, so between 5 to 7.5 meters, are hip fire. This, with the bullet spread of the MP5 with that class I just showed you, will allow you to land pretty much every single shot whilst being a far harder target to hit. Remember, whilst you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're also strafing left to right quickly, along with throwing in jump shots or drop shots or even a slide to make sure you're taking full advantage of that additional mobility that you gain from firing from the hip, making it far harder for the opponent to hit you. Now, I mentioned it earlier. The difficult thing with firing from the hip, especially on console compared to PC, is that you don't get that slowdown that you're used to when aiming down sight. So you'll notice at first you'll probably overcompensate and pull your shots a little bit wide. Trust me, this is to be expected, and it will just take you a few games to get used to. If you can, just play some multiplayer on shipment, shooting bots, and hip fire only, so you improve your hip fire accuracy. Next, just because this MP5 is geared towards hip firing doesn't mean that you shouldn't ADS with it. And like I said, it'll take you a few games to get really used to the new MP5 build, and hopefully from my gameplay you can see exactly how I use it, which you can then apply to your own gameplay. Now, I'll normally always open up with hip firing when at close range. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, to lock onto and track the opponent whilst holding the highest mobility possible. Then, once I see my hit markers landing, I'll then go to finish them with the aim down sights once I felt like I've won the gunfight and know it's going to snap onto my opponent, so I land all my shots where I don't need that extra mobility but want to maximize my time to kill. And really, you'll notice the more confident you get with it, the better you'll read the situation on when you should be hip firing and when you should be aiming down sights. Something else I don't see enough players doing within Warzone is using the MP5 to really help move around the map a lot faster. It's one of the big benefits in Warzone of using an SMG in your class, is because of that extra movement speed that you get. And because of amps, which everyone should really be using with all of your loadouts, you can switch weapons pretty much instantly. And you'll notice whenever you see any top player moving around the map, they'll always have their SMG out when moving across open ground or trying to pull off a flank. Firstly, if someone aggressively pushes you from an unexpected angle up close, your MP5 is the gun you're going to want out anyway. And with the hipfire build and your sprint to fire speed is insane, so you'll always have an opportunity to react and get your shots off and not get killed. Secondly, you always want to be as unpredictable as possible and make players not know 100% where you are, and moving around the map quickly is going to make you far harder to track. So get into that habit of switching to the MP5 whenever you're attempting to pull off any type of flank or trying to get into a power position on the map. Now, one of the biggest things that I've learned more recently is that you don't always need to be the person on the move. Sometimes you want to bait players to be the person pushing you, where you catch them out rather than always being on the attack. Call of Duty has always been a fast-paced game, and back in respawn modes especially, you always took risks to try and push through to the enemy spawn to get the map under control. But in Warzone, Sometimes taking a player down, retreating, and then waiting and holding an angle will lead to you getting some really easy kills. Knowing when to push and when to wait is an incredibly difficult skill. Knowing that you don't always have to push enemy squads will improve your gameplay a lot. Now, this final tip is probably the most important in Warzone whilst using your brand new MP5, and it's how to fight inside of buildings, whether you're fighting in a stairwell or trying to push an enemy squad inside of one. First of all, stun grenades are your best friend. If I can, I'll always throw a stun into a room before pushing inside with the MP5. Also remember to cut the cake when you enter a room. Check your angles and try and narrow the amount of places that you can be shot from. When fighting on stairs, sometimes it's worth standing on the stairs and holding the angle closest to the railings where you can start shooting someone's feet the second they start chasing you. Run down a couple stairs and then stop and wait. It's little things like that which will help make you the best Warzone player you can be and help you take full advantage of that hipfire MP5 build. But let me know what you think about the new best MP5 build, in my opinion, in Warzone down in the comments below. Smash that like button and click one of the videos on screen for more Warzone content, and I'll see you there. Bye!